right, so get ready, because we are diving headfirst into the UK this time.
Oh, yeah.
To a place called the Grizedale Estate.
Okay.
Um,
Sound a little rough.
it definitely, it's got a vibe.
Okay.
We're looking at a live stream
Okay.
from a guy named Darren Gee, and the title alone kind of tells you what you're in for. Darren Gee, I kept the Grizedale Safe from Nonces Like Batman.
Wow. So, I mean, that right there already tells me a lot about this guy. This is not someone who's afraid to speak his mind, right?
Oh, no.
Like keeping the Grizedale Safe from nonces like Batman. I mean,
What is a nonce?
so a nonce, I think in the UK, that's like a pedophile, basically.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right, so we're dealing with some serious subject matter here.
Oh, yeah.
And he's comparing himself to Batman, like a vigilante.
So he's like a vigilante taking care of the estate.
Yeah, so he's kind of got that persona going on already, and
Right.
he's very much like that through the whole live stream.
Okay.
So we're going to get into, obviously, content of it, but just to give you a little bit of background on Darren.
Yeah, please.
He's kind of this local figure in the Grizedale state.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a bit of a history. You know, he's been in trouble with the law before, but he presents himself very much as a protector of the community.
So he's got that kind of like Robin Hood-esque
Yes, very much so.
kind of a vibe to him.
He's looking out for people that he feels like the system is not looking out for.
Interesting.
But the reason we're really digging into this live stream is because it's so much more than just about, like, keeping the peace in Grizedale.
Okay.
It's like this raw, unfiltered look at life on a housing estate in the UK today. And he's got opinions on everything.
I bet.
Like everything.
Like what?
Community dynamics,
Okay.
politics, immigration, like you name it.
Right.
He's got something to say about it.
Wow. So it's like a window into a very specific world that we might not otherwise get a glimpse of.
Yeah, and he doesn't hold back.
Okay.
Like, I'm telling you, some of the stuff he says
Is it shocking?
shocking,
Okay.
but it's also thought-provoking.
Right, because it's you're saying it's not just about like the shock value.
No.
There's actual substance.
He's got these insights and these observations that are really interesting to unpack. So, like, one of the things that really jumped out at me when I was watching this, he starts talking about how Scousers,
Scousers?
for those who don't know, that's people from Liverpool.
Okay. Right.
So he starts talking about how Scousers will treat each other differently based on how much money they have.
Really?
He says, and I quote, "The sad thing is, a lot of Scousers with money don't want to help other Scousers."
Wow. That's a pretty strong statement.
It is, and it kind of sets the stage for this whole, like, theme of disillusionment that I think he's feeling.
Yeah, disillusionment with his own community.
Yeah, and it kind of makes you wonder, like, what's going on there that's creating this sense of, like, division.
Right, like, is it purely about money or is it something deeper? Is it about, like, a loss of shared values or something?
I think it's a bit of both, honestly.
Yeah.
And what's so interesting is that he contrasts this with how he sees Scousers welcoming immigrant families.
Oh, interesting.
Like, he almost suggests that there's more compassion for people coming in from outside than there is for people who are already part of the community but might be struggling.
So it's like a weird kind of inversion of what you might expect.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes Darren's perspective so valuable here.
Yeah.
Because he's not afraid to point out these uncomfortable truths. And it really makes you question, like, what are our own biases?
Yeah.
Who are we willing to help and who are we not?
Exactly. And I think that's something that we all need to ask ourselves, you know?
Absolutely.
It's easy to kind of like turn a blind eye to these things.
Yeah.
But when someone puts it out there so bluntly like Darren does, it's hard to ignore.
It's hard to ignore, and it really does make you think.
And, you know, it's not just about these personal observations. He actually gets into some pretty heavy political stuff, too.
Oh, yeah. He's got a lot to say about the state of democracy in the UK.
Like, what kind of things does he bring up?
Well, he's really critical of the current system.
Okay.
Like, he feels like it's not really serving the needs of working class communities.
Yeah, I can see how someone in his position might feel that way.
Totally. Like, he even questions how democratic it really is when a party can get fewer votes overall but still end up with more seats in parliament.
Right. That's the whole thing with, like, first past the post systems versus proportional representation.
Exactly. Yep. And he sees that as a major disconnect between the people in power and the communities they're supposed to be representing.
It's like his voice. His vote, it doesn't feel like it counts as much.
Yeah, it's that feeling of being unheard, being ignored.
And that frustration kind of spills over into other areas too, right? Like his views on immigration.
Totally. Yeah, and that's one where I was really interested to hear what he had to say, because it would have been so easy for him to go down this whole us versus them kind of thing.
Right.
But he actually doesn't.
Really?
He tells this story about a family who moved to the Grizedale estate from another part of Liverpool.
Okay.
And they were treated with suspicion, like outsiders.
Wow, so even within the same city, there's that kind of...
Yeah, like this sense of, you're not one of us. And then he compares that to how foreign families who moved to the estate were welcomed with open arms.
Oh, wow, that's such an interesting contrast.
It really makes you think about our perceptions of who belongs and who doesn't.
It's like we're more willing to accept people who look or sound different from us, but we forget about those who might be struggling closer to home.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's where Darren's ability to connect these bigger issues back to personal stories is so effective.
Yeah, he's not just talking about abstract concepts. He's grounding it in real-life experiences.
Like he talks about this kid, Thomas, who he kind of took under his wing.
Okay.
And you can just hear the affection in his voice when he talks about this kid.
So it's like a mentorship kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like he saw something in Thomas, this potential, and he wanted to help him.
That's really cool.
It is. And he talks about how Thomas had a medical condition.
Yeah.
He had to use a colostomy bag.
Oh, wow.
And how that made him feel like an outsider.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But it also shows this different side of Darren.
Yeah.
You know, this empathy, this understanding.
Totally. Like, he's been there. He gets it.
And I think that's what makes him such a compelling figure.
Yeah.
Because he's not afraid to be vulnerable, to talk about his own struggles.
And that makes him more relatable, even if you don't agree with everything he says.
Exactly. Like when he talks about his own experiences with the criminal justice system.
Yeah, he doesn't shy away from that.
No, he owns up to his mistakes. Talks about his regrets.
It's refreshing to hear that kind of honesty.
It is. And he uses those experiences to try to guide others, particularly young people who might be headed down a similar path.
So he's trying to break the cycle.
Yeah. And one of the things he says to women involved with men who are caught up in criminal activity is, don't have kids with these fellas if they're not willing to change their lives.
Wow.
It's harsh, but
it's real.
It is. And you can tell it comes from a place of genuine concern for these women and their children.
Yeah, he's seen the impact firsthand.
Exactly. He's like, think about the kids. They're the ones who end up paying the price.
And what's remarkable is that he doesn't exempt himself from this call for responsibility.
Right. He holds himself accountable, too.
Like, he talks about his own relationship with his parents, his regrets.
He does.
Yeah.
It's raw and honest.
You don't hear that every day.
No, you really don't.
Yeah.
It's like he's laying it all out there.
And it makes you wonder, like, what led him to this point in his life?
Now, what shaped his worldview?
Exactly. It's like a combination of personal experiences and these larger social forces.
And he's trying to make sense of it all, just like the rest of us.
Yeah.
It's really something else.
Yeah, it makes you realize there's always more to the story, right?
Always. And I think that's what's so important about listening to voices like Darren's.
Totally. Even if you don't agree with everything he says, it challenges you to see the world from a different perspective.
Exactly. And to confront some of those uncomfortable truths.
Absolutely. Like, he doesn't sugarcoat anything.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah.
But even with all that, I mean, the guy's clearly been through a lot.
Yeah.
You still get this sense of hope from him.
Oh, yeah.
This belief in the power of community, and especially in the potential of the younger generation.
It's like he sees them as a source of hope.
He does. He talks about how sharp they are, how funny they are.
Right.
And he says this one line that really stuck with me. He says, these kids of the future, they just need someone to believe in them.
It's kind of inspiring in a way.
It is. And it made me think about how important it is to have those mentors, those positive influences in your life.
Especially when you're growing up in a place like Grizedale.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, you know, we started this deep dive talking about Darren Gee, this local figure who's trying to keep his estate safe.
Yeah.
But we ended up somewhere so much deeper.
It's like peeling back the layers of a really complex issue.
Exactly. We got into social dynamics, politics, immigration.
Personal responsibility.
Redemption. It's a lot to unpack.
It really is. But I think that's the beauty of these deep dives, you know?
Totally.
We start with one story, one perspective, and it opens up all these other avenues for exploration, for understanding. It makes you realize how interconnected we all are.
Yeah. And how much we can learn from each other, even from people we might not expect.
Absolutely. And I think that's a good place to leave it, you know?
Yeah.
Just with that reminder to stay curious, to keep asking questions.
And to always be open to new perspectives.
Exactly.
Well said, my friend. Well said.